Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me for Cybersecurity Awareness Month is Ahmad Baitalmal, co-founder and chief technology officer of Mytra, Carl Froggett, chief information officer of Deep Instinct, and John Cannava, chief information officer of Ping Identity. We're here to discuss 2025 cybersecurity priorities for business leaders. It is great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks, and thank you for joining us for such an important initiative, cybersecurity, of course. Ahmad, let's kick it off with you. Tell us where your company sits within the cyber ecosystem.
Well, we build warehouse robots that move full-size pallets inside warehouses, like 3,000 pounds in full 3D. These are distributed robots inside a structure. Think of it as Minecraft for your warehouse. All these robots are distributed. They talk to each other. They talk to the cloud. Everything is fully secured. So it's big on our minds.
Yeah. And Carl, tell us about the work that's happening at Deep Instinct.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Deep Instinct, we're a zero-day data security company founded on an advanced AI called deep learning. And our goal is to prevent, not just detect and respond to the cybersecurity threats that all our businesses face today.
Yeah. And John, Ping Identity.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. So we see identity at the center of cybersecurity. It's how you identify yourself so that you can interact seamlessly and with security on the internet. And so we spend a lot of time with the Fortune 100 companies being able to optimize those experiences.
Yeah. And John, it's interesting. AI has had such an impact on every single vertical across every industry, and cyber criminals are using AI to conduct disruption at a rapid pace. It's almost a cat and mouse game where the good and bad actors are leveraging the same type of technology. What's your thoughts around that? What are you doing to mitigate these AI-fueled cyber threats?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing a continued erosion of confidence on the internet and people's ability to transact with confidence. And so, we're all used to the ill-formed email from a Nigerian address. But what we're seeing is further and further AI-enabled, really hard to detect emails that are causing a lot more phishing intrusions, and it's going further. We're seeing, deep fakes and videos impersonating trusted members of organizations and of customers that are really causing a lot of issues. And so it's going to be increasingly important for companies to leverage tools that incorporate AI to combat those. And I think we're going to see, tools such as what we provide at Ping Identity that help us identify those deep fakes before you transact with confidence.
Yeah, and Carl, to add another element to it as well, Gen AI, right? So your chat GBTs of the world that consumers are now familiar with, it's also being used to create malware more easily. And then, by the way, now we're starting to talk about quantum computing as well. So it sounds as if it's happening exponentially.
Yeah, it is, Jill. And just building on what John said, right? Generative AI is enabling the bad actors to be much more sophisticated and produce zero-day kind of threats. John's on about phishing and deep fakes at a quality we've never seen before. From the malware and ransomware perspective, they're able to generate zero-day malware and ransomware. We're seeing a lot of breaches, Jill. So these techniques are very effective because we're seeing the breaches. Certainly last year, the most successful ransomware kind of finds, over 1 billion on record. And yet, according to Gartner, it was the year of the most spend in IT and cyber ever. So, what we're doing right now is clearly starting to fail in the face of generative AI and these more sophisticated bad actors.
And Ahmad, when you think about all the buzz around AI, perhaps are we as consumers and the enterprise too optimistic about the possibilities?
Yes, the thing is, it's sort of a new technology that's out there, and we're seeing the effects of using AI in attacks. It's a new vector that's coming in, and we're also seeing a lot of promises from companies that say, "Hey, we can use AI to protect you." It's too optimistic to kind of say we know exactly how this is going to pan out. It still, in the end, comes down to your risk assessment. of, your operation. You look at your operation, it's like, okay, should I really invest, in protecting these operations or not? Maybe just traditional approaches are fine, because we don't know exactly how effective AI is. I mean, even deep fakes right now, they still have multi fingers, multi nostrils. You could still say it's effective, but it's still detectable. And so we have to be cautious about our approach with applying these tools.
Yeah. And John, in 2025, this is really going to be the test here, right? Where it's critical to remove yourself from traditional strategy as you're integrating into more decentralized platforms. And it outdates the strategy and approaches that have been taken towards cybersecurity because it's ineffective at this point. What should the new strategy look like? And is it okay to completely abandon everything that we've been taught about cybersecurity? Because I still think it comes down to the user also has a role in this as well.
Yeah, I think it starts with, if you are still operating on legacy systems, now's the time to build a strong foundation on which you can take advantage of the latest technologies. And so I think it's important customers, and businesses move to those. I think, in terms of that future proofing, passwords are really challenging for us to keep secure. When you think about the number of breaches that have occurred over the years, many of these passwords, regardless of complexity, are available on the dark web. And so we're recommending to our customers that they move more towards passwordless authentication methods, such as biometrics. And you can only leverage those with newer platforms. So I think that's going to be really important, is that folks, make the plunge if they haven't already, and then start looking at this passwordless future.
Mm-hmm. And Carl, when you think about mitigation and response, are enterprises thinking about mitigation too much, or are they starting to blend what the response looks like as well? How are you advising companies to be more proactive and not necessarily so reactive when it comes to cyber?
Yeah, Jill, I think I've been doing this in cyber for almost 30 years. We go through cycles, and the bad actors right now are definitely on the front foot. The ability to have visibility and monitor your environment continues to be important, but the last 15 years we've been in this detect and respond. And the matter of fact is, what we're seeing, and these are not small breaches, we're seeing big, well-known companies get breached. The detect and respond is too slow. The bad actors are able to move much more quickly than ever before. And how much time do you need to respond is the thing. So you now need to be leveraging the new form of AI, like we do here at Deep Instinct with deep learning, so you can prevent these things from happening. And to be blunt, Jill, that technology didn't exist 10, 15 years ago when we fell into the detect and respond, but now it does. And this is that shift and implementation away from just relying that you can respond to something, because clearly we can't, as we see in the news every day.
Yeah, which is so interesting because new technology begets new technology. So this conversation can look very different 6 months, 3 years, 5 years from now. Ahmad, the general consensus has been if you're outside of the gates, it's technically safe. What about managing cyber threats on the inside?
That's the new reality that we have to live in. This is something that Google had to deal with a few years ago. They were faced with the reality that their internal systems were not as secure. So they go with a zero trust approach. Everything in the inside is not safe. So you have to assume that attackers have gone beyond your firewall, beyond your VPN, and treat it with zero trust. Every device has to verify. This extreme redundancy is the approach that we take, and you have to approach the existing systems that are in your facility, even if they're not able to join this new approach. You have to protect them as well and say, hey, every communication within the inside is also a suspect that needs to be verified.
Yeah. And John, I mentioned before that technology begets new technology. And of course, the end game is data, right? So data is the commodity these days, and more data is going to beget more data, which means more products and new ways of operating in this world. Is that going to lead to stricter security protocols as you think about 2025 and beyond, right? And as multiple organizations within the enterprise are competing for resources, how is this being communicated with the board? How is senior leadership approaching this?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think, everybody needs to be aware that cyber and AI, as they come together, are creating a new nexus of requirements that have not yet been written in a lot of cases. And so, setting a good foundation, leveraging some of the best practices we've seen from prior legislation is really important. But one of the things we're also seeing emerge is, a increased data residency requirement. And so as you're trying to operate across your enterprise, your multinationals, you're seeing the need to slice and dice your operations in finer and finer grain. I think one of the things that we see here at Ping is, to instead of, avoid those regulations, let's build solutions that embrace them and provide more power back to end users to control their own identity data through decentralized identity solutions.
Yeah. And Carl, do you think that we will see preventive strategy mandates become commonplace across global jurisdictions? Because to John's point, you are operating in a global multi-jurisdictional environment. And by the way, every industry has its own set of regulatory frameworks. So for example, healthcare, financial services are heavily regulated. How are you adopting preventive strategies around all those variables?
Yeah, just to build on the zero trust as well, it's really difficult to implement on top of something that already exists that was not built for zero trust. Coming from the financial background, I'm well aware of the regulations, and especially just mixing in there with John. One of the advantages of deep learning, for example, is that we never need to see the customer data. So that whole data privacy kind of piece is a nice advantage of the more advanced AI that's out there. But ultimately, look, boards, CEOs, they don't want disruption, right? It's not just about paying the ransomware. If you look at the overall disruption to United Healthcare and some of the other big breaches, it goes on for months. And their cost at the start, their estimated cost at the start is normally tenfold when they count in all the lost productivity and whatever else disrupts them. So it'll come down to, yes, you want to assume the breach when you're building and designing, because that's what you're trying to map and model out from a threat perspective. But they're going to want preventative controls. They're going to say, what are we doing to ensure it does not happen, not just that we can respond to it?
Yeah. And Ahmad, I see you shaking your head, and you make a great point in the notes that were sent over to me that there also needs to be a framework around it, because AI just isn't the news cycle today. This legislation is something that's going to perpetuate when you start thinking about the ethical and responsible use and what those frameworks look like. It's challenging for companies in the absence of that, because regulation by enforcement doesn't provide clarity either. What are your thoughts around the evolving regulatory landscape?
There needs to be established at least a baseline legislative framework, a perimeter around it, just preliminary. We can't just leave it open. We are still trying to characterize the new threat of AI in cybersecurity. It's the new animal in the zoo. We're trying to find out what does it do? How does it behave? Right now there's a new attack vector with AI that's coming in, and we're going to have a new defense vector against it, and it's a cycle that keeps happening over and over. I totally agree with Carl. There's a lot of industrial equipment that is not able to join this new approach, but that means it's an opportunity. That means there's the whole fear about AI taking over. No, that means there's going to be more investments. There's a lot more work to do, and the way to defend against these new attack vectors is to build tools using these attack vectors to defend against them. So we have a huge opportunity ahead of us.
And that's a great way to look at it. And Carl, I think the other angle around the regulatory framework advocacy is you don't want to stifle innovation because there is no framework there. You don't want the bad actors to get ahead because, I mean, they don't have any guardrails that they necessarily have to adhere to. And by the way, they're very well funded too, right? So I think it's incumbent upon the industry to want to work with regulators and so forth, so that we don't have a brain drain of innovation going elsewhere, and that we're able to provide that leadership.
No, absolutely, and that's something that each vertical, each industry certainly could do with their regulators as well. And there are many examples of where we're using AI for good, right? For the defense. Yeah, we've already seen what I'll kind of call co-pilots helping security administrators with the volume of the data. I do feel we're missing the point a little bit there, because it's the quality of the data and not necessarily the volume sometimes that is the challenge. And then we're also, we're just at the beginning of this journey, Jill. I can't emphasize how immature we are right now when it comes to using this next generation of AI. And it's the same for the bad actors. So fighting AI with AI is what we do here. And, in a couple of weeks, we'll be releasing a product here based on deep learning and LLMs. They'll take something that takes a SOC analyst hours to do today, and it'll be done in seconds. So we absolutely can work within the guidelines and regulatory kind of frameworks to bring good into this and not let the bad actors just run rampant.
Yeah, and that's what I think is exciting about financial services when you think about how that can be applied to research, right? Because if everyone's kind of producing the same research, this will allow analysts to extrapolate ideas and think about, more complex ways as it relates to, the companies that are recovering. I think that's a great use of how financial services could be approaching it. John, do you think the tech stack perhaps is too overwhelming? What differentiates technology vendors?
Yeah, I think in terms of, how we're going to see this materialize, I feel like, those vendors who are investing for the future and demonstrating through their roadmaps, I think, will be the ones that we get long-term commitments with, right? I think in a lot of cases, buyers right now are taking a step back and saying, can I make long-term commitments with these solutions when I'm not really sure how well they're going to fare in the new world with these new tools and these new challenges? And I think, have companies like the folks represented here, we're really leaning into these types of challenges and ensuring our customers see that we're going to be providing solutions that help them take advantage of these tools and overcome these obstacles.
Yeah, and Ahmad, to wrap up here, I'll position the question in a different way. What are some of the concerns that you are hearing from customers in terms of how they're deciding how to allocate resources and what their concerns are?
They're trying to measure it against the traditional approaches of saying, let's just hire an external company that takes care of all this for us. If you're running a factory or warehouse or some kind of logistics, and it's not your bread and butter to get into cybersecurity, so it kind of offloaded. The new approach now is you have to adopt these things internally. Your team has to become experts, use the tools that are becoming available to make it a core competency of your operation. It can't be something that just be handed off as it used to be anymore.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate everyone's insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.